All right, everybody. John McCarthy here, Sales Director at Spyglass Realty, and I'm excited to announce our panelist. I have the pleasure of hosting a panel. Let me just pull up my notes here. We have entrepreneurship through real estate. So our first panelist at the age of 24 was named Austin's #1 real estate agent by the Austin Business Journal, and has built many businesses over the past several years. And 7 years ago, in 2018, he was the founder of Homeward. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Tim Heyl, CEO and founder of Homeward. Welcome. That's Tim. So the next gentleman I'm going to introduce, when you're #1, you like things done a specific way. So I would like to introduce Gary Ashton from the #1 RE/MAX team in the world.
Thank you, my people.
Thanks, Gary.
Oh, good. Table for my drinks.
There you go. That's
All right.
That's Gary's tagline.
So I'll tell you why I say #1 in the world like that, because I'm from England. And whenever you talk to anybody from America and they say world, they say world. And I can't say it with my English accent. So I just overemphasized the world, and then it just became a thing. #1 in the world. And I need the reverb and the echo, so it should be #1 in the world.
I tried my best. I don't know if y'all got any reverb from the audio guys, but we tried. Awesome. Okay, guys. So I want to start off with a little bit about your story. Tim, we'll start with you, and then Gary. Your bio and a little bit of your introduction talked about, where you started and what you're doing currently. But tell us your story, and how it relates to real estate and your entrepreneurship journey and some of the successes that you had along the way.
All right. Well, it's good to see you all. I'm from Austin, born and raised, and after college, I graduated in 2009 and tried to get a real job, one that somebody pays you, real money for showing up. And I was pretty unsuccessful at that. I was a finance major in 2009, so it was kind of a tough time for that. So I got my real estate license, and I decided I would start selling houses and making money while looking for a real job. And after a number of events, going to a sales conference, learning from some of the best in the office that I was showing up at and a member at, and a couple of other things, kind of found out that this is like a real career path, and I went all in. I stopped interviewing for real jobs, and I started prospecting for business. I was 21 years old, so I was actually one of 2 of my friends in my entire friend group in college that graduated on time. So all of my friends were still in school. They didn't own houses, they weren't buying houses, and everybody I knew from Austin kind of knew me as Little Timmy Heyl. So my parents' friends were not going to trust me to, sell their house. At least I didn't assume as much. And so I just started calling people, homeowners, in and around the city of Austin. I started on kind of the outskirts, Leander, Cedar Park, Kyle, Buda. Those were outskirts back then. And, just tried different neighborhoods, different zip codes. I talked to expired listing homeowners and for sale by owners and things like that. And I think what happened for me, honestly, is I had a success. I had somebody who invited me to their house after not making that many calls, and had me actually list 3 homes. They owned 3 homes in the same neighborhood, and they had me list all 3 of them. I don't know if any of them actually sold. Back in 2009, it was 180 days on market average. It was a little tough. But it was immediate trigger in my mind that you make the call, you get them on the phone, they invite you to the house, you list the property, you can make money. And it clicked for me. I'm like, well, if I do that enough times, I can make a lot of money. And I just went all in. And there was a point from 2010 to 2012 where I made 1,000 phone calls a day without missing a weekday, Monday through Friday. And I was just like a machine on this. I was so laser focused. I didn't work with any buyers. I didn't answer my sign calls, which probably frustrated a lot of people.
Me?
Yeah. But I was just super, super focused and dialed in on finding people who wanted to sell their home. And my first year, most people were uninterested in selling now, but they would tell me when they were going to sell. Almost everybody I talked to was very pleasant, very open, and would say, next May when our kids graduate, we're going to start thinking about it. So follow up with me then. And I would. I had a little, I think it was like top producer, but I put everybody in, scheduled the follow-up call, and I committed myself to, after my lead generation calls, making my follow-up calls every day. And so like by the second year, I'm calling people back and they're like, oh yeah, we are listing our house, or we are going to sell our house, come on over. And I'm like competing against nobody, talking to somebody who's like glad to, have me over and talk. And I just started listing homes like crazy and started building momentum that compounded year after year.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Yeah. Gary, tell us a little about your story.
So mine is very, very different. So I'm from England. I was a drummer. I worked for an advertising agency, played drums, ended up playing drums in a band that eventually opened up for Tears for Fears. So these are 80s bands. So 10% of you will know who this is. So Tears for Fears, Krista Berg had a song called Lady in Red, Joe Cocker. Anyway, so I always tell people I'm pretty good on drums, or so I thought. And so that band did the whole behind the music, fell apart. Me and my dad had a couple of motels. Yes, you would call them motels in England. Sold those. This is in 1990, so before most of you were born. And we ended up buying a motel in Clearwater Beach. So did that for 10 years. I'm still playing. After the 10th year, my dad wanted to retire, so to sell the hotel. At the same time, the band that I was playing with got a lot of interest from somebody in record labels in Nashville. So I thought, this is awesome. Sell the hotel, move to Nashville. I'll become a big star playing drums in Nashville because I'm so good. And then I'll do the 1031 exchange. So I'll get my real estate license and buy some investment properties, reinvest it. So when I got to Nashville, that's when I realized that I'm good. But when you get to Nashville, you're like bottom of the barrel is 16-year-old kids are just absolutely phenomenal. So I realized at that point, music is not going to be my career. So I got my real estate license, did the 1031 exchange. So I thought if I get my license, then I get the inside scoop on what's coming on the market. I also get to keep the commission for me, and then that would be my career. But originally it was going to be music and real estate, and then it went completely the other way. But I got in real estate in 2000. I got my license 2001. So if I go back a little bit with the advertising agency, I used that experience and knowledge to generate leads for our little motel in Clearwater Beach, which was pre-internet. But we did really, really well. And then the internet came along, which is mid-90s, so we were one of the first ones to do that. So I was all about learning basic HTML and learning the user experience of what people do when they want to go on a website and book a hotel. Then we go forward again to 2001. The first thing I wanted to do was I bought GaryAshton.com because I always wanted Gary at GaryAshton.com. I should have bought a bunch of other URLs like NashvilleRealEstate.com and things like that. But so then I just focused on my business on lead generation for me, generating leads online. I was probably one of the first ones in Nashville to use PPC. That enabled me to be the first ISA, as it were. So I would take 1 or 2 calls a day from PPC. That enabled me to become, I was approached by the people that own Nashville.com, and Nashville.com were generating all these leads. This is back in 2002, I think it is. And they couldn't find anybody to take their leads. And I was telling this to Tim. Sometimes when you get to a level where if I was trying to contact Tim, I might not be able to get hold of Tim. If I can I talk to the CEO, founder of Homeward? And I'm sure there's a level where I would get so far, they'd want to know what I was talking about, and then they go, yeah, he's not going to talk to Tim, he's an idiot. But if Tim heard me, he might go, actually, that's a good idea. So what happened was the Nashville.com people could not get through to the decision makers of the Remax, Keller Williams, all the big brokerages at the time. So they just looked and saw who was doing PPC. I was always make sure I was number one in PPC, but back then it was more like 1 or 2 cents a lead, a click. And then they gave me the opportunity for Nashville.com, and it was too expensive. So they said, we'll give you free leads for a week. Do you want to try it? And then that was like having a little tap with a faucet with the drips. That's the PPC leads I was getting. And they just turned it on, and it was just leads coming from everywhere, which is why I ended up starting a team, because then I had to start distributing leads out to people. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that did. So, Gary, continue your story a little bit. So you moved to Nashville, pursue music, you realize real estate's going to be the way to go. You've got a ton of leads that you're generating, PPC.
Yep.
How did you go from you with your ISA generating these leads to the number one Remax team in the world? Take us through that.
I mean, it's a long process. So obviously, I would always say I was the first ISA. I would answer all the calls, even when PPC, obviously me, even when we got 20 to 30 a day, I could still answer all the calls. So I would talk to people. I'm English, so they would hear me talking, and then they would go, wait, now where are you from? You're not from the South? And I said, no, I'm from England. And then, so what, then the question, now, why are you in Nashville? What brought you to Nashville? And I would say, well, I'm a musician, I'm a drummer. So that meant that all of a sudden, we're not talking about real estate. We're talking about me being in Nashville, and it's a music city and things like that. So I would connect with people on the phone. And you know this, when you're talking to people, they're behind a brick wall. And the more that you talk, you take one brick down, take another, then they kind of see it. And by the end of the conversation, you're like best buddies. The problem was, if Tim was on my team, I would say, I'm going to introduce you to Tim on my team. He's the expert in Hendersonville. You will love him. He's amazing. And then they would feel that they were being passed off because I developed such a good connection with them. And I say, but Tim knows everything about, he's the best. And they go, oh, so we're not going to work with you. So then I realized then really those leads should go directly to the agents. And agents are always busy doing something. They're out showing, they're writing. So when that lead comes in, that's when people look at it and go, yeah, I think you'll get that one. So they let it go, which means that lead goes on a round robin. So the longer you leave it, the colder it gets, kind of thing. So we then moved on to using ISAs, the ISA model, and used people, ladies out in the Philippines mainly. They were all ladies, I think. And so that was good. That moved the needle because they always answered the phone, but they weren't licensed, and also they were overseas. So in the end, we moved to a different model where we had one agent that was a really good agent on the phone, and he wanted to leave to go work in a model home. And we said, no, why would you do that? Why don't you be our licensed ISA? And that's what he did. He became that. So all of the Philippines crew that we had were doing all the work behind the scenes because they did such a good job. Their work ethic is amazing. That they're always there and available. So we just moved them more into the heavy lifting behind the scenes and a little bit of follow-up and things like that. And then focus on Scott. Scott Hull is the guy that was doing this. He became our first ISA. Became very apparent that he was very good. So we started converting more, and the lead handoff was good because the messaging was not Scott developing a rapport with them, more about Scott doing exploratory, let's figure what's the motivation, what's bringing you to Nashville, all that good stuff, and then hand them off to the expert. So from there, we went to, I think now we're up to 8 licensed ISA. So it's just a gradual process. And, you know, I did a lot of SEO. I forgot to tell you that. So did a lot of SEO because with Nashville.com, I was getting 20 to 40 registrations a day. But as Google changed its algorithm, being a geo domain, as in Nashville.com, didn't mean that you were number one for everything. So they started slipping down. So I was doing SEO on my own site. So that helped to compensate that. And then Zillow came around. And then I realized that's the bigger competition. So I started buying leads from Zillow, which then led to being the agent that they wanted to use for Zillow offers. You remember that, where they were iBuying? And then from there, they said iBuying didn't work, so we're going to do this thing called Flex. Would you want to be the first team in Nashville to be the Flex partner? So really what it was doing was removing that $150,000 that I was spending a month on Premier Agent, moving it to the referral model, which then, to me, that's when the agents on the team really know that they're actually sharing the cost of acquisition. So we did that, and that left me with some spare cash lying around. So then I moved on to Realtor.com. So I knew the sales director there, and I said, I heard you got this product called, I actually didn't know what it was called, but you could buy a section of the market, which those leads would just come into you. So I think I started off with 30%, then went to 70%, and then finally last year we went to 100%. So to me, that means I don't have all my eggs in one basket. I've got different lead sources, and we do a little bit of PPC, but we do the organic, we do the Zillow, and now we do Realtor.com. So now I have 100% of the market in Nashville. So that, but it's, you make mistakes along the way. I've done other things where that didn't work.
Gary and I have known each other a long time, but we've more gotten to know each other more recently. And one of the trends that I noticed about you that is unique, different than my career journey in real estate, and also different than I think most real estate agents, is that you were willing at all of these stages, whether it was Nashville.com or whether it was PPC or whether it was buying up all the Realtor.com zip codes or whatever it was.
Yeah, I got Realty.com.
You were always willing to go big and stay focused on that thing to make it work. And so I think, like, when I look back,
that's because I wasn't married, so I could nobody telling me what to do. Now I'm married, things maybe have to.
But you would spend big, and you would follow through on it and make it work, and then you'd go to the next thing and spend big. And I think a lot of us either spend little tiny amounts and aren't willing to really commit the investment, or not follow through on it to make it work. And at each stage that I've heard you talk about, and I've asked you deeper questions about it, it's like, oh yeah, you went big and you followed through, and then you moved on to the next one.
Yeah, and the other thing is, obviously it's not me. I think I talked to you briefly about Scott, my business partner that became an integral part of the business. That's Deborah Beagle. So it's bringing on people. So I think I'm good at some things, but I'm not good at everything. Deborah comes in and she's amazing at all of these things that, I'm not very good at. And she loves Scott, an amazing sales guy, but also amazing in tech. So you rely on people that you bring on, and that truly becomes a partnership. And that's how we've evolved, because I feel like Scott brought on Joe Levy. So Joe is he runs the ISA department. So similar kind of people, similar kind of personalities. We all gel. We all have the same goal, but everybody's pretty much specialized in their area. And so I just rely on attracting good people.
Attracting good people. That's great. And so Gary and I were talking, I remember along these lines, I'm going to ask you guys a question after this, but it was about decision making and challenges and fears. And Gary's like, you know what? I've got good people around me. I got to make a decision, and I've got to get them to work, because he plugs into his resources and the people that he surrounds himself with, because he knows that he's got to make big choices, and he's not by himself. He's got a whole team of people behind him. So it was a great takeaway that I had from Gary yesterday, is the people that he surrounds himself with. Tim, so your journey is a little bit different than Gary's. So tell us, a little bit about like your journey with different businesses that you've had over the past few years, and some of the challenges that you've faced and you've overcome, and what did you do when you were faced with that adversity to overcome some of those challenges?
Man, well, lots of challenges. Mostly people challenges. More recently, market challenges, right? When I first started getting back to 2012, I was, making tons of money, selling houses like crazy, and my whole team walked out on me. I was a terrible manager, terrible leader, terrible, example of how to, build a team, hire people, and help them achieve their goals. I was young. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was like, I think, money hungry, success hungry, and just like super focused and dialed in. And my entire team walked out on me, basically together, went and started another team without me. And that cut deeply. So a lot of lessons learned during that time, about a lot of reflection, and a lot of healing relationships on the other side of that to move forward. I think.
But success is the best form of revenge.
No, it's not revenge. For me, it wasn't about revenge. For me, it was about how do you grow from this? How do you get better from this? I think ultimately, I realized a lot of things about myself. I learned that I was a very impatient person. I learned that I learned a lot during that time, and I recalibrated and I rebuilt the team. I had the funnel, I had the sales pipeline. I just had to rebuild the team. And when I rebuilt it the second time around, I did it differently. I treated people differently. I managed the business differently, and that worked really, really well. In fact, that rebuild was in 2013, and I've probably still got over 10 people that work for my company today that were with me back in 2013. So, really learn from that and learn how to focus. The idea in business is that you're never going to be able to accomplish more than what you can do in a day without bringing other people in, right? You succeed through others. There's Cash Flow Quadrant, that very old book where it talks about there's these 4 boxes, and it's basically I do it, we do it, they do it, my money does it for me. And it's kind of a gradual process. I do it is like a job or a self-employed job. We do it is we're a team and we're doing this together. They do it is what I ultimately got to as a 7th level business, where I have a CEO running the business and they truly do it. And then my money does it for me is like, now I'm taking that money and I'm investing and it's making me money on its own. And I learned to work kind of through those boxes and get to that place. But I learned that I'm going to succeed through other people. And that was probably the next challenge, was like, how do I go from we do it to they do it? Because I succeeded on the front end of my career by grinding, by like the harder I worked, the earlier I got in, the later I came home, the better I did. But the moment I graduated from that to management, or this kind of forms of leadership, all that changed. Like no matter how hard I worked, the needle wasn't moving up. It wasn't about how hard I can grind or how hard I can work. It was about my ability to select the right people, align their goals with my goals, and figure out how to empower them regularly to actually accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. And that's a whole different skill set, a whole different set of things. So that was a journey in and of itself. And then there was a focus challenge. Once I started making money without doing the job myself, I had money and time. I had a lot of time on my hands all of a sudden, but I was still in my 20s. So I'm like, what do I do with this time? I'm ready to roll. And so I started a bunch of businesses, some that were good and did well, and others that were flops and I should have never started them in the first place. But I found myself in 2016 probably, completely unfocused. Like the whole thing that built my success in my career was focus. And I found myself completely unfocused. And then I wanted to become focused, but I couldn't because I had all of these responsibilities across all of these things that I had spun up. And it took me years to wind down and narrow that focus again. So by 2018, I had this idea in my mind. I wanted to go compete in real estate at like a national scale. And I wanted to build a company that I kind of reflected on what I had built was a recreation of what already existed to make money for my employees and for me. But how do I build something that, could meaningfully change the game by making buying and selling homes better, different for people? And everything at the time was all about technology. It's like technology is going to change the game. And so I went through this multi-year period where I was trying to figure out, well, what kind of technology would that be? And never could land anywhere. It was a years of wandering through the desert trying to
find ChatGPT,
find the right business idea. Yeah. And what happened was I knew I needed to focus on a critical problem and figure out how to solve that problem in a unique way that's not happening today. And around that time, I was having Bible study with my friends from church. They were over, and they're literally telling me they found this house that they're like, my friend Griffin, his wife is dying to get. It's in Lost Creek. It's like Indian Canyon Cove or something like that. And they're dying to get this house. And his wife wants it. There's already 2 offers on it, but like they can't get it. And I'm like, dude, you didn't even tell me you're looking for a house. What the heck? He's like, oh, I'm working with my friend. You know that one where like your friend's working with his closer.
I didn't want to bother you.
Yeah, exactly. So he's working with his friend, this guy named Matt McKnight. If y'all know Matt McKnight, he's an Austin agent. And so I told Griffin, I called him the next day and I said, I have an idea. What if his whole problem was we can't buy the house. We haven't listed our old house. We need all the equity in our old house. You know, typical problem that sellers run into. I said, what if I buy that house for you? I'll just buy it cash. And you guys can move into it and you can pay me back. You can buy it back from me whenever you sell your old house. And he was like so confused. And he was like, well, what if I don't sell my old house? And I was like, well, I'll guarantee that it'll sell for some lower price, but you're going to sell your house. I'll give you a guaranteed price on it that I would buy it for. And he said, okay, what's the catch? And I said, well, I don't really have one yet. But I said, but this is a problem that most of my sellers run into over and over and over again. And I would love to see if this helps you. And he was like, okay, meet me at Dimensional where I work and let's sit down with Matt and talk about it. And Matt was like, no effing way, you're not doing this. I'd like typed up a contract on Microsoft Word and showed it to them. And he was just like, you're not doing this, Griffin, no way. And anyway, he did it because he's a friend, he trusted me. And it was like magic. They won the house, they moved into it. They sold their old house in like a day. It worked out so incredibly well. They were blown away. Matt McKnight comes over to me and he's like, dude, I've got like 5 other clients that I want to do this again with. Can we do this again? And it was the most amazing experience. And from that moment, I realized that for me in my journey, it's not going to be as much about technology as it is about money. You know, there's a capital problem in just the fact that most people who are trying to buy a home or sell a home have equity, and it's not liquid, and they need to use it, and there's a timing issue. And if we could go solve that timing issue with capital, we could really go change the game. And so I started Homeward. And it's been a journey. Homeward's had tons of success. It's had tons of failure. We got our butts kicked when interest rates did what they did in 2022, and kind of the move-up buyer shifted to the sideline. We had to pivot the business. We had to learn, think about who are we as a company? What do we do at the core? What do we do well? And how do we pivot in this environment? And we launched our next product, which we call the Homeward Cash Offer, where an agent can bring their seller to Homeward. We give them a cash offer. We'll buy their house in a couple of days, and then we'll buy it at a discount. But then we work with their agent to go list it, sell it for its full market price, and pass all of the upside proceeds back to the seller. And we launched that in 2023 when days on market was longer. How much am I going to sell my house for is more unclear, and that just started to take off again. And so we've had lots of ups and downs over time, and we've had to pivot. We've had to, I skipped the whole lesson about overhiring. The market was growing like crazy, hired way too many people. I had to go through a time period where I was just cutting jobs, which is like the most, the saddest and hardest thing to go through as a CEO or manager or whatever. And learned a lot about, how to not go through that again and how to avoid those kinds of mistakes. So lots more lessons than I know we have time for on this panel. But I think the thing about business, whether it's as a real estate agent, building a real estate team or brokerage or anything else in real estate, like it's number one, like no success is just up and to the right. It's lots of ups and downs, climbing the mountain, getting to the next step. And every time you do that, the harder it is, the more you grow from it. And the more you grow from it, the more prepared you are for the next climb. And I've experienced that over and over again for many years. And it's been a very rewarding journey.
Awesome. As you can see, we could sit up here and talk to these guys all day long. They have so much information. They're so knowledgeable. Unfortunately, we're out of time for this panel. But I do want to find out, Gary, do you have any last parting words or advice for anybody that's building a real estate business and career, entrepreneurship?
Building? I would talk to Tim. He's done it but use the Homeward product, because we've actually just started using it in Nashville, literally December, I think. I think we've already got 3 deals under contract and just sold the first one, I think. Yeah, so
Dynamic duo right here, y'all. You're seeing it.
And I would just say, figure out what the most important thing is for the growth and success of the business, and focus like crazy around it. Who you get in business with matters more than almost any other decision that you can make. And not everybody you hire is going to make an equal impact. So there's usually like 1 or 2 people that are going to drive like the monster share of the trajectory of the business. And 3, just like when hard times come, just know that that's part of the journey. And that's what actually gets you better and gets you stronger for the next level.
Awesome. Everybody give it up for Tim Heyl and Gary Ashton. Thanks, everybody. All right.